back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the most recent shift in my cancer story, which is finding out that I had metastatic breast cancer, which is terminal. So I'll just jump right in. I was diagnosed on January 29th of this year, and metastasis is something that I had not really thought about. I actually didn't know it was terminal until I found out that my cancer had metastasized and, did a bit of internet research before even speaking to my oncologist. Also found out information from my sister, who is officially a nurse as of tomorrow. Yay, Heidi. But anyway, basically what metastasis means is that cells that are cancerous can actually go away from where they originated and end up somewhere else in the body. And no other cells do that. You aren't going to find healthy breast cells in your liver, or you aren't going to find healthy kidney cells in your brain or anything like that. Cells are very specialized for where they are. But metastasis is actually one of the hallmarks of cancer. I'll include a slide here for you to look at really quick. The hallmarks of cancer are just kind of behaviors that are particular to cancer that are weird, for lack of a better word. And so metastasis for me means that breast cells that were cancerous moved to my bones. And it's been 4 years since my initial diagnosis, and if you watched my last video, you know that I had a double mastectomy, and so, supposedly that rid my body of the cancer. But, there's always a chance for little cancer cells to get away. Tumor is one big thing, but a tiny cancer cell can go somewhere else. And mine went to my bones. And I hadn't been expecting it, but I always knew that it was a possibility, I guess. I just didn't know what it would mean if it happened. I didn't know that metastasis was terminal. But I had heard from an oncologist at my grad school, who I went to see when I was kind of having a breast cancer emergency and couldn't come home to Colorado to my own oncologist. He told me that cancers like mine were really good at going somewhere and hibernating for a long time and just being dormant, and you could have no idea that they're there, and then they just wake up someday. And I guess that must be what happened with me. I specifically have estrogen receptor and progesterone receptor positive cancers, highly positive, which was a good thing in terms of treatment because I did hormone therapy, which is kind of very straightforward. But apparently the hormone, the cancers that are strongly influenced by hormones are the ones that are very good at going and being dormant somewhere. So anyway, I didn't know about it until January, as I said, but I probably honestly had the cancer in my bones already for about 5 or 6 months before my official diagnosis, I'd say. I was in so much pain during the fall semester. I was doing classes and I was trying to do research, and Duke's campus is pretty big, and so I was just walking a lot and just found that just everything hurt. My back hurt, my sternum was the thing that I noticed the very most. It just hurt so much. And actually at the time, I was wondering, I also mentioned in my last video that my breast implants were rotating and they're placed under the muscle. And so actually I was kind of thinking, are these rotating, pulling the muscle out of my sternum, or how it's attached to the sternum? Because it just hurts so much. All these pains are very different. So, I don't know if it hurt more than my mastectomy after surgery pain, or less, or just differently. I guess just differently. But anyway, it hurt a ton. I felt like I couldn't carry my backpack. I felt very slow and clunky when I was trying to do my research in my lab. I'd have to be bending over and moving things, and I just felt so slow, and everything hurt so much, and I was, popping Tylenol like crazy. Eventually, it did get so bad that I went to urgent care in September of 2018, and I just told them my sternum just hurts so much, and I don't know what's wrong with it. And probably I should have pursued this further because this is kind of a case of me not knowing enough about medical stuff and being not impressed by a name, but they gave me a name, and I was like, oh, then it must not be cancer, it must not be my breast implants, because when I went into urgent care, I did tell them, that I had breast cancer and I have implants, and they didn't really seem to think that that had anything to do with anything. They were just like, it's called costochondritis, it's inflammation of cartilage kind of surrounding the sternal area, in your chest, and they're like, this happens to a lot of people and there's not always a cause and all this stuff. And just the fact that there was a name, I was like, oh, that must be it, I have costochondritis. And I remember later telling my sister about this, the nursing genius, and she was like, well, okay, but what caused the inflammation? Like, costochondritis is not a diagnosis, but to me at the time it felt like it was, because they put a name to it. And so I was just like, okay, well, I have costochondritis, it will clear up eventually. So I just tried to ignore it. But then my back pain was getting worse and worse. I went to a doctor about that too, and they were like, well, since your chest hurts so much, you've probably been compensating by doing weird things with your back, so when your chest gets better, probably your back will feel better. And I was like, okay. And so I sort of felt better over Thanksgiving break when I wasn't walking around campus as much. I had a few days off. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe this really is just from overuse or heavy backpack or whatever. But then it got horrible in the lead up to Christmas. And I was anticipating getting my implants out anyway. I had planned that even before the pain got so bad. But once the pain got so bad, I was just like, yeah, okay, well, I'm getting the implants out, so this will all clear up. I'll go home for Christmas and have the surgery. And when I come back for spring semester, my pain will be gone and I'll feel better. And it probably, again, should have been kind of telling, because I had a breast MRI before my implant removal surgery. And I'd had several breast MRIs before, and they're arguably uncomfortable because you lay on your stomach in the MRI machine, and there's it's padded, but there's like a bar that sits right on your sternum, so your one breast can go on either side of the bar. And that MRI, I barely made it through. My sternum hurt so much from all that pressure on it. They give you like a kind of panic button in MRIs, so that if the noise or the enclosed space or anything gets to you, you can hit the button and they'll get you out. And I have never even come close to hitting it, because I'm like, no, I just want to get the stupid scan done. But that day, my sternum was just hurting so much, and then kind of, I guess I must have been in a little bit of an arched position from being on my stomach, so my lower back was also hurting, and I just could not take that MRI. It was like the longest 30 or whatever minutes of my life. So then I had the implants taken out the day after Christmas of last year, but after the kind of surgery after effects wore off, and I got over just the pain from surgery, I was like, wow, my pain in just my chest isn't better, and I really thought it would be. And so then it was just a couple days before I was supposed to go back to North Carolina for my last semester of grad school, and I just called my oncologist and said, I have so much pain, and can I come see you? And bless her, she's so wonderful, always, but that day she just really came through. She got me in that day, asked me what all was hurting, and then she got me scheduled for scans the next day. And so that day I had a bone scan, a CT, and a head MRI. And yet again, bless my oncologist, because she called me the night, so it was Friday night, and I was supposed to go back to Durham on Sunday. And she called Friday night and said, look, these scans don't look good, don't go back to Durham. And I was just like, what? Okay. I felt a little vindicated that I'm like, okay, so apparently there is something going on with my bones, so I'm not just being a wimp, like this must actually hurt. I'm not just, weak and pathetic. So I think even then I sort of saw the writing on the wall. I'd also had blood work, and there are these proteins that they always check for at oncology appointments called cancer markers. And they don't set tons of store by them because they aren't like perfect indicators, but my cancer markers had been just kind of trucking along at like normal, and then suddenly, and normal's like under 40 or something like that, and then suddenly they were at like 300, and I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, after that, I stayed in Colorado. I got a biopsy, and then like a week later, which was hard. I thought waiting over the weekend for my diagnosis back in 2016 was bad, or 2015. But this was so much worse. It was like a week, and I probably drove my doctor's office crazy because I was calling every day saying like, do you have the biopsy results? Do you have the biopsy results? And then they finally did and told me that it was like breast cancer in my bones. So that means metastatic. Then I met with my doctor like a couple days later, and we talked through it all, and she told me, yes, this is terminal, but we'll do everything we can to give you as much time as we can. And she was just so sweet about it. I can't imagine having a different doctor. And I was sitting there, and it was my whole family. My parents came, my sister came, and they had to pull in extra chairs and stuff. And she just said, well, I'm sure we all want to know why this happened. And I said, like, well, I don't, I'm like crying. Like, I don't know if I want to know, because I don't want to know if it's my fault, and I'll just feel so guilty. And she said, there is no way this is your fault. We did everything, like sometimes stuff just happens. But, I did my treatments. I did the surgeries, I took my pills all the time when I was supposed to. And, it just, as I've said in previous videos, sometimes stuff just happens, and it just happened to me. So one other point that I did want to address about this is I was confused for a while, like, why is metastatic breast cancer necessarily terminal? Like, I just didn't get, like, if bone cancer isn't terminal, if somebody just gets bone cancer, usually they get like an amputation or something, but it's not terminal. And it's kind of interesting because metastatic breast cancer, or like cancers that metastasize to the bones, often go in what's called the axial skeleton, which is kind of like central, like skull, spine, ribs, pelvis, and that is all where mine is. I think I have a little bit of a lesion on a shoulder maybe, but otherwise it's like lots of spots on my ribs, lots of spots on my spine. My lower back had like a kind of maybe fracture or something. Like, no, they can never really tell from the imaging if it is a fracture, but just a spot that looks very weird. My sternum was like very affected by the cancer. So again, my two spots that were causing me so much pain, I felt kind of like, okay, well, good. Glad to know that there was actually something going on, and I'm not just, weak. But anyway, I didn't understand why this was terminal. And I think what I understand now is just that we always think that chemo just kind of like flushes out your body from cancer. And that's just not the case always, or ever. With cancer, usually the treatment is, to treat like the tumor that's there. So with mine, I had a mastectomy that got rid of the tumor. And then chemo would hopefully, in very non-medical terms, like chase down the remaining cancer. But when the remaining cancer is as widespread as mine is, there just isn't a way for chemo to get all those places and just eradicate it. And cancer is wily enough that it kind of learns to evade the chemo as well. So I am taking chemo. It's a pill. I don't have IV chemo. But it won't get rid of all the cancer, and eventually the cancer will metastasize to something that matters more. I mean, bones are important, but you can live with cancer in your bones. So eventually it will go somewhere that is like more vital, and that's what makes it terminal. So anyway, that was a quick overview of terminal metastatic breast cancer. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks. Bye.